All right, good morning, everyone. It's 9:30. My high school teaching days are going to keep us on track. Welcome to the Workforce Development Panel. This morning's panelists will focus on how to build a better pipeline of workers for your business. Our panelists are Matt Gruen, President of Marine Retailers Association of the Americas, which has just recently completed an in-depth survey on the marine industry workforce. Patience Kahn, Industry Liaison for the Marine Industries Associations of South Florida, which is dedicated to promoting, protecting, and growing almost 250,000 jobs in the marine industry. And finally, Katie Spiker, who's the Federal Policy Analyst at the National Skills Coalition, where she analyzes post-secondary education and human service policies. So we're going to start it off with Matt.
Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Matt Gruen, President of Marine Retailers Association of the Americas, as Libby mentioned. Our focus on the workforce issues, of course, date way back to pre-recession. We all know that we had a shortage of skilled workers in the industry that became very severe back prior to the recession. The recession hit, we lost about 35% of our dealerships across North America, and so the problem kind of waned a little bit for a while, and now it's back. Now our dealers are growing, we're selling more boats, and the need for these skilled workers has come back in a big way, and I think we're at the point now where we would consider the problem to be severe once again. So we've had a number of our members coming to us, talking to us about the issues that they're having finding technicians, issues they're having filling other positions within their dealership. So we set out this earlier this year to define what that problem is, because there hasn't really been a deep understanding of how bad that problem can really be. So we launched a workforce assessment. We're proud that we worked very closely with ABRA on this. We talked with them and related to their survey. We worked closely with the Massachusetts Marine Trades Association and their survey, and really kind of modeled it after that, so we could take what happened in what we know about Massachusetts, and we can take what we know about ABRA and really go across North America with that. And so we had a great response. I'll share a few of the key components here, but so our outreach was very wide. We worked with the press, BI and trade only. We worked with some of the engine manufacturers to get the survey out to their members, to their dealer networks. We went out to our membership and our database to get the responses that we were looking for. We had over 517 people actually respond to this, representing over 1,300 total retail locations. So we feel like this is a very statistically relevant survey, and it mirrors what we're seeing across the industry from a representation of the dealerships. 49 states and 3 provinces represented in the survey, and as I noted there, from a revenue standpoint, from an employee count standpoint, it was a very solid mix of dealership sizes, and the geographic location was very representative of what we see across the industry. So what we would consider are some of the key statistics out of this is that out of all of the positions that dealerships budgeted to fill this year and had on their payroll this year in their payroll budget, 21% of those positions are currently unfilled. That's on the full-time side. On the part-time side, which would be more of the entry-level help, maybe the yard work, the detailers and so forth, 23% of those part-time positions were left unfilled as well. From a total overall view standpoint, 59% of the positions that we found to be unfilled were related specifically to the service department. And of course, the highest percentage of those, which was almost 90%, were related specifically to the technical field, the technicians, the riggers, and so forth. So the problem, as you can see, is back, and it's very clear that we've got some issues to address there. And then I would say that the key takeaways that we found with the survey, and diving a little bit deeper into kind of the why behind some of this, we found that these quality technical skills are extremely hard to find. And I think We all know that. That's why we're here today. What we're finding is that we don't have enough kids going into tech school. We don't have enough kids raising their hand saying that they want to work in the marine industry. And the kids that are going through the schools and getting educated are typically hired before they graduate. So it's becoming a bigger problem as we move forward because we're just not getting enough people to show the interest. When they're coming out of the schools, we have a gap between what the dealership principals or service managers are expecting those students to know and what they actually know. I don't have the statistic here, but I think it was something like 90% or so of our respondents rated those the kids that were coming out of school as poorly prepared or inadequately prepared to do the job. We also have a generation gap. A lot of these dealership managers and owners are saying that our workforce today doesn't want to get their hands dirty, or our kids today don't have the work ethic that they need in order to do the job properly. So there's a little bit of a generational gap there. Maybe most troubling is that when we asked the dealers to explain or describe their recent hires, over 50% of them said that they were people with marine industry experience, which to me means they're stealing employees from each other, which is just simply not healthy. 74% of the respondents expect the need to hire even more staff in the next 3 to 5 years. We're growing, right? So we should expect that. And finally, I think that the dealership recruiting methods are they're very, very subpar. A lot of that, their hiring strategy is word of mouth, which is not working very well, and they're simply not investing in their employees through training. I think we found that it's like about $500 per employee that our dealerships are budgeting to train their staff with. It's just not enough. So that's kind of the key takeaways from the survey. Happy to answer any other questions, but I'll pass it on to Patience, and then we'll come back to Q&A at the end.
Okay, what I'm going to talk about is the SOC codings, and that's the standard occupational classification. What we discovered, we had met with, in our workforce attempt, we met with our local workforce development guys, and they pulled up a statistic that said that the average pay for our marine workers was $9.90 an hour. We said, that can't be possible. We can't even get a boat wash for $9 an hour. And we sent them back, and they did a more in-depth study, and they came back and said, you're right. You're 28% higher than the median salary. But what was happening is they're just pulling marine codes, and when they pull the marine codes, it doesn't capture everyone. It doesn't capture the marine canvas company is a seamstress or a tailor or a sewer. So in statistics, if we're using our data for lobbying, if we're using it to apply for grants, we're being cheated out of this information that is out there, but it's been put into a big bucket. We have a marine fuel dock. It's a gas station. It's a gas station. It doesn't even come on our radar. So SOC is the Federal Bureau of Labor and Statistics. Every 5 years they review the process of the coding. So NMMA and MISF got together and discussed it, and Michael and Duncan are working on this project where we're reaching out to the marine businesses to give us the title of the job they do, their employees do, and a very brief description. And they're going to homogenize it into a detailed description so that it makes sense. What will happen, we hope, is there's the first code, and that's like, say, an electrician. Then the next code is master electrician, wire, or however that works. But there's no marine category in there. There's a third list that takes you down to, you can go down to a third category, which would be marine. We're hoping to be able to provide enough information so that those categories in the third list at least show up, so that when our economists can search the codes, they can actually see where marine is. And hopefully, there's enough marine businesses that show up that they're going to say, oh, look, we should probably make them their own category. And then when we go for a grant, we have data provided by the government that shows that we actually are an important business in the industry, in the country. It's pretty simplified, but it's a long process. They only do the codes every 5 years. 2018 will be when this next version comes out. But I encourage every association to get to Michael. If we haven't reached out to you already, reach out to me or Michael, and we encourage you to participate so that we can get those codes clarified. I guess it's pretty simplified, but that's it. It's kind of boring, but it's data. There you go.
Referring to Michael.
NMMA.
That one.
Lewin. Michael Lewin.
Thank you. My name is Katie Spiker. I'm with National Skills Coalition. We're a national advocacy organization, and we focus on expanding access to skills for middle skill jobs, so jobs that require more than a high school degree, less than a 4-year degree. And a lot of our advocacy is based on the fact that we know, much like in the marine industry specifically, that there's a skills gap. 54% of job openings over the next decade are projected to be in this middle skill range, but only 44% of workers are trained. So that's a broad look, but obviously within your industry there is also this large gap between what you all have workers and the job openings that you also have. So at National Skills Coalition, we are as the name suggests, a coalition of workforce organizations, workforce development boards, community colleges, community-based organizations, and we also work with, including one of our primary partners in the audience today, Pam Lenzion, we work with a group of businesses, mostly small to medium-sized businesses in our Business Leaders United group. And we pride ourselves on educating all of our policy positions by listening to the voices of small to medium-sized employers to ensure that these voices are brought to the policy conversation. So some of the issues that we're focusing on right now that I'll cover very briefly are apprenticeship, career and technical education, and Higher Education Act and access to training for some of the skills that our partners across the country need. On apprenticeship, we are focusing on work-based learning, which we define as slightly more broad than registered apprenticeship, but encompassing many of the strong tenets that make registered apprenticeship one of the gold standards of training. So long-term relationships in an employment relationship between an employer and an employee, where the employee receives increases in skill attainment that correspond to increases in wages. So in many industries, this can be anything from a 1 to a 2-year apprenticeship across to even a 7-year apprenticeship program. Does anyone in the audience run an apprenticeship program? Awesome. Okay, great. Then I'll be looking at you for any examples that you might have. So then you recognize that it is something that's helped your business, and that's something we hear from our partners across the country. It's also something that the administration and Congress have taken up a lot of energy around. Folks in the room may be familiar with the American Apprenticeship Initiative. In the fall of last year, the government granted $175 million of H-1B visa funds to expand apprenticeship. This went to groups across the country, and it was to expand in high-tech industries, so much like the marine trade industry. And also last year, at the end of last year, Congress appropriated $90 million of funds, which the Department of Labor is in the process of allocating at this point, to help expand apprenticeship as well. So those funds are going to be split between some of the state level efforts. I don't know how familiar folks in the room are with apprenticeship, but in large part, about half of the states across the country have state apprenticeship agencies, and they run their apprenticeship really on the state level that reports to DOL. The other half of the states, largely the states in which there haven't been traditional apprenticeships, report directly to DOL, and those are DOL-run apprenticeship states. And so the 60 million of this 90 million appropriated funds is being directed to the states at the state level to help all 50 of the states expand their state level activities around apprenticeship. At this stage right now, DOL is just asking for states to share innovative practices, and there's about $9.5 million that's open for granting right now if anyone's state is interested, or if any of you will work closely with your state agencies, they can help you expand and just brainstorm about what your state could do.
Later this year, they're hoping to release the rest of the 60 million, so another 50 million to states. That stands to, the grants probably won't go out directly just 1 million to every state, but you can see from the allocation that there really is funding there to make a sufficient and significant change to apprenticeship all across the country. The other $30 million in funds is allocated to national activities. Some of this will be for intermediaries, which many of you all, especially as industry associations, would be fantastic candidates for. That can help expand innovative practices on a national level across your partners. And there's also some money in there for expanding the pipeline of workers so that there's diversity in both gender, age, race of applicants into registered apprenticeship, so that as we're expanding, the expansion is really intended to be expanding to new trades, so expanding into some of the industries that haven't traditionally used apprenticeship, as well as expanding to different people and different size employers, focusing on some of the small to medium-sized employers that we work with. Moving on from apprenticeship, some of the other issues that stand before Congress right now are the Perkins Career and Technical Education Act, which is something that we had high hopes that Congress would take up for reauthorization by the end of this session, and the longer the more drama from the election that comes up, and the longer that we fight over the funding prospects in both the House and the Senate, the less likely it seems like we'll have a chance to reauthorize this bill this year. But it's a bill that tends to have broad bipartisan support because it really does address some of the skills gaps very acutely felt by businesses and community colleges as well as secondary schools across the country. At National Skills Coalition, we're working on aligning CTE with some of our priorities in apprenticeship to be sure that students that are in CTE programs have access to some of the on-the-job training opportunities that we hear from our employers are often missing. So this, in the way that some of the students who are coming out of the programs may not be trained adequately, some of the proposals that would integrate work-based learning could help ensure that employers have a voice at the table earlier in the training process and are able to streamline these skills to what they really need. We've also been working on a policy that would expand access to funding for employer and community college partnerships. I don't know if anyone in the room worked on any of the TACT grants that were out over the past couple of years, but the TACT grants helped fund some of these partnerships because, as you all know, workforce development is a key part of your work, but it's not something that you're often funded to do, and it's not something that is often easy to allocate time for in the middle of actually running the work. So having these funds and working with community colleges, requiring community colleges to be extremely responsive to the employers is one of our priorities with Perkins. The Higher Education Act is another training-related authorization that's potentially before Congress. This is a little less bipartisan, and so we don't anticipate it happening this session, but next session we see that there's going to be large support on both sides of the aisle for reauthorizing HEA. One of the things we've been working on is expanding access to short-term Pell. So Pell training that would allow employers to access federal funds for training for their workers for these short-term programs. Right now, Pell is capped at 600 hours. So any training programs that require less seat hours than that in the classroom aren't eligible for Pell funds. So this means many of the really expensive and short-term training programs that you all probably need workers to access aren't eligible for these federal funds. It's one of the conversations on the table along with a broader swath of issues on HEA that you all may have heard more about, including some of the affordability and expanding Pell to year-round or other options like that. So I'd be happy, I've got some handouts on the back table. If anyone wants to bring any of these on any of their Hill visits, I'd be happy to talk more about any of them during the question and answer period. But it's a very brief and fast description of National Skills Coalition's work.
I also think some of your documents are in the bound ABC
awesome.
materials. We kind
Thank
of
you.
stole them and
Thank
put them in there.
Yeah.
So we have about 10 minutes for Q&A.
For patients, relative to coding, in my experience in the industry, you have a lot of people that wear many hats. How does that get coded? Because someone might be an electrician at one point, but later on in the afternoon, something happens and they need a hand at the hauling lift. Or depending on the time of the season, they may be a haul-out person in the fall, and a launching person in the spring, but in the winter they may do more of different types of projects. So how do we code that?
And I would say what you can do is and I'm not an expert on coding by any means, but all those jobs should have a job title and a description. It doesn't have to be one, it can be one person, but they're now doing a different job. You still need to identify those jobs and what they do.
Patience, I think there is a code for marine service technician, a broader one that includes all of those. I think one exists now, and I think I saw it recently. Yeah,
It's
so I
very
have to-
possible, but the problem isn't that. It's that we're not identifying
The individual
the
occupations.
individual jobs.
That's right.
Beck?
Question on the retail survey that you did. You had, how many, 49 states just about in there?
Yes.
Is the state data available for us to look at? Say, I'm in Virginia, for example.
Yes, we have we're in the midst of compiling a full report on it. We literally just pulled the data about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We have the information down to the zip code level, so we'll be able to provide that for the states. Yeah.
What's the next step process? Now that you have done the research, what's kind of your plan of then implementation?
So our entire reason for existence at MRAA is to help the dealers grow and find greater success, right? So we're in the process of determining what's the priority. We have a number of concepts that we're working on right now, one of which is an apprenticeship program. We have a career center that we're developing that we're trying to create more awareness of so that we can start doing a better job of matching employers with qualified job seekers. But it's a multifaceted approach with a lot of different components to it. It's really a matter of prioritizing what the survey results tell us and going after that area. A lot of us have been in this industry for 20 years plus. We love this industry, and that's worth sharing with the next generation of people that can come in here. So we've got a story to tell. We need to figure out how to tell it.